This is going to be a good one to introduce. But just a quick reminder, if you're tuning in, has everybody been to every program that we've run on this stage so far? So if you go to nikonusa.com/live, you can see every program that's happened on this stage and watch it as many times as you want free to go back and see the programs you missed or go back and see something else again. So I don't know how to describe the relationship I have with this gentleman. First and foremost, he is a Nikon ambassador, and I've known him for close to 30 years. I've been with Nikon 36 years. He considers himself a generalist, but he shoots everything from commercial portraits to photojournalism to the tops of buildings looking down, from the tallest buildings in the world. He is a mentor to me. He's a great friend. He is my Pookums, and it is Joe McNally, Nikon ambassador. Let me introduce you to the stage.
Thanks, man. How's it going? Everybody all right? Salute yourselves. Give yourselves a pat on the back. You made it through PPE 2018, and you're still here. What are you guys doing here? The bar is open, man. I'm very honored by your presence. Thank you very much. So here we are. This is the last half an hour, the last go-round, and then they are going to close the doors. So I'm very honored to be here. Thanks to all the Nikon folks. As Mike just indicated, I have dear, dear friends that I've worked with for a lifetime here within the Nikon Corporation. And the reason I stay with Nikon and keep shooting their cameras is they keep making great cameras. And I said the other day, I said, a central question for me when these days evolve here is how good is this going to get? But here's the thing, it's going to be a mild detour here, right? I'm going to give you a bit of a detour, just in the sense, I'm going to talk about the D850. Right now, we're like in the throes and passion of the Z camera, right? Look around you. Everywhere, there's Z, okay? But, I thought that question about how good this is going to get was answered with the D850. To be honest, that was a camera that I'm like, okay, I'm done. Can I write a letter to somebody and tell them I'm happy? Can you imagine that? Walking the face of the planet, a happy photographer? Have you ever heard of such a creature? Okay, because we kvetch, right? We're like, oh, yeah, whatever. The D850 is the combination of elements I've been seeking in a camera forever. That's the beautiful thing about being a Nikon ambassador. They actually called us in. They listen. And at this last kind of go-round a couple years ago, they looked at us and said, all right, design your dream camera. And my response was actually typical. It wasn't completely original. But I said to them, I said, look, I'm split. I go on location. I got a D5 for speed and durability. I got a D810 for resolution in the studio. I got a D500 for convenience factors like a tilting LCD. Put them all together. Make one camera that does these things for me, okay, please. And the D850 was the result. Wasn't me, just a suggestion. Lots of people were saying, do that, and they did. So I'm going to run you through some imagery. I've shot with D850, and there'll be a little video involved here as well, but I am happy, okay? The resolution, the speed, the accuracy of AF, it's a camera that does everything for you. So let's get going. Okay, all right. So, another beautiful thing about being an ambassador is that another ambassador, dear friend Ron McGill, is a zoologist and a wonderful photographer down at Zoo Miami. And I was down there in Miami. I said, can you fix me? I'm not an outdoor guy. I don't know an owl from a pigeon. I grew up in New York. And he's like, I'll fix you up. So he produced this rock star of an owl that the D850 resolution embraced, and a parrot. Just like depth you could fall into, I've shot a lot of different stuff. I've been poking around. Mike described me as a generalist. Yes, I self-describe as a generalist. I try to avoid labels. I started my career here in New York City in 1976 as a copy boy at the New York Daily News. Right? I went through newspapers, wire services, into magazines. I've been a magazine freelancer for forever, really, forever. As such, I've never had interest, I guess, or passion for one particular thing. I've been My whole career, I've enjoyed the sound of the shutter. Put me in the field and give me a picture to shoot. I'm happy. And I don't really, it's not that I don't care about the subject matter. It's like anything can present itself to my lens, and I'll try to find it interesting. I got to stop for a second. Dave Burnett is in the back of the audience, one of the quintessential photojournalists of our time, Mr. Dave Burnett. Just amazing. All right. I've shot flying dancers with this camera. I've been at, salsa shows and, the kind of these reviews, where dancers swirl about in costumes. I love dance. I've shot dance now for probably 30 years, almost kind of as a hobby. Done portraiture, okay? This is a 58-1.4, all right, in a cafe in France. I've taken the camera into the Mediterranean when I found this lady doing her morning workout in France, in the south of France. Couldn't be lovelier. Just a wonderful person. I've stuck them in helicopters. I've shot boxing. This is right over in Brooklyn, just across the East River, okay? These gentlemen are, like a gentleman like this. He's been in the ring, right? He's got that face, that rugged face. This could not be more simply done. It's a 105 micro with one speed light. It's one little raw light overhead, looking for shadows, looking for harshness. As opposed to this, where I'm looking for a little bit more wrap. I'm letting the body sort of define itself via the mechanism of the light and the style of light I'm using. This gentleman, looking for intensity, looking for expression, shooting wide open, letting the fists and everything kind of go into oblivion, but concentrating. Would you get in the ring with him? I wouldn't. I mean, this is one tough dude, okay? And then, of course, here's the thing. This camera works with radio speed lights. I have been known to use a speed light or two along the way, all right? So we decided to do a reprise of a picture we did years ago, a street scene in Tarrytown, New York. This is my rough kind of guide, if anybody can make sense out of it. But 32 speed lights later, it looks like that, okay? All right, that's Callie, our crew chief, simulating action for me that I eventually did this with. They wanted something that indicated speed and power, so we used parkour athletes in New York City, shot over in Brooklyn. Power, speed, autofocus, 200 to 400, dropping the focus on her eye as she charges through this muddy kind of ravine that we created. I had to light the whole forest. I built a bonfire at the back. This is production work. This is kind of, for whatever reason, maybe it's because I got raised Irish Catholic and I have this special connection to pain. I'm okay about doing this stuff. This is not easy stuff to do. You have to be painstaking about it. But then you do something at the end of a day like this, an available light portrait. Simple. Sunlight through a silk. Wide open, 105 millimeter lens. Drop the focus on the eyelashes. Okay, and then production work. Okay, what can I say? I've seen too many James Bond movies. That's the deal, right? So, this is the world we live in. Nikon Singapore, which is a creative arm of Nikon, contracted with a German ad agency who then reached out to me and said, write us some treatments. So I wrote some treatments. This was the one that they chose. I was imagining an elegant lady escaping with the jewels from a museum past the sleeping security guard. They actually said yes. And oh my God, I ended up here in the Museum of Ethnography in Budapest. And I had to light this whole bloody museum. I had to light it from the outside because I had to work at night. I didn't bargain on this, but I'm like, okay, we can do this. And there's me staring at this statue, and I have an expression on my face like, what have I done? We had a truck in the lighting from Munich to Budapest. I had cranes outside the building. We created daylight. We had a fancy model. If you notice, we had to fly the gown. So these guys over here with the fishing pole-like things and monofilament line are shaking the gown. The statue isn't really falling. This is an ad, so all bets are off. All that bracing got retouched out afterwards. We couldn't keep going through statues, I mean, And we ended up there, okay? with an ad that ran for Nikon, and they asked me about the copy. They said, what do you think about this copy? I'm like, I'm okay with time taking chances because this picture I just took was a very big chance. I had no idea I could actually shoot this, you know, but you don't let the client know that up front. You just don't. What do you say to a client when they come to you and say, can you do this? Yes. Yes, you say yes. Okay, because they're those magical people at the other end of the phone that are willing to pay you money to do the job. That's fantastic. That's great news, okay? And then I took the D850 to Cuba. I've always shot dance. The Cuban dance scene is very vibrant and very beautiful. And they have old cars, okay? And those old cars, thankfully, are made of steel. And she weighs about, you know, 10 pounds, so the driver was okay about putting her on the hood of his '57 Chevy. She doesn't really get her hair cut there, you know, but the barbershops are a quintessential part of Havana life, and I wanted to work in them. Laundry, everywhere in Cuba, from the balconies, so I put a ballerina there. In an old theater. This lady, Josie, owns this beautiful house. I'm a tenacious sort of photographer. I went to her house about 5 years ago, and I photographed in the kitchen, and I failed. I failed miserably, okay? And it's stuck in my head. You have to be like, you know, your head has to be like a beaver dam or something. Things get stuck in it. And as a photographer, you cycle back. You cycle back. And I went back, and I promised myself I'd go back to this kitchen and get a better picture. And I did. Okay? That is the nature of being a photographer. Everybody talks about, oh, this photographer is really good, or this photographer does that. Here's the thing that is one of the underlining bedrock things you need as a photographer: tenacity. Sheer out-and-out tenacity, okay? The willingness to hear no a tremendous amount and have that be undaunting, you know, absolutely undaunting. A friend of mine was doing a story in the Kremlin years ago. His translator came and said, the official just said in Russian to me that your request for a photograph was denied, and he said, the answer is absolutely no forever. And the photographer looked at him and said, this sounds very promising, you know? You know, you have to laugh in the face of danger, you know? So, and this staircase was one of the central pieces of architecture in the house, and it became the basis for a little film that we did.
I have been living here for 50 years, of course, and I have a lot of memories that cannot be forgotten. I like the library very much because that is a place when I sit, I start looking at everything that belongs to my past. I have many people that say, no, don't live in the past. But I say, no, I have to, because I have my past always in front of me. My husband loved ballet, and my father too, my mother too. When I see these young dancers, I feel very well because I think about me when I was younger. I am feeling like we're in the theater again, with the rehearsal and all that. You remember many things, very good things. I miss my husband every minute in my life. He loved to play the piano. I remember very well. Some Cuban dance he loves to play because I like it very much. I think that the Cuban people like to dance because they feel not only free, but as an escape for their feelings, and they do what they want to do. It's not a dream, but it's a feeling. It's a feeling that when you see a ballet dancing, they express too much themselves because they are very romantic sometimes. And it's like a feeling of belonging to each other. Many people think that only the Cubans knows how to dance a rumba and all that. That is not true, because you have it with the girls of the ballet. They are very good in the ballet dancing. To hear the music of the Cuban music, really I like it. But that doesn't mean you don't have culture. You have a culture too. Even sometimes, I am upstairs and I start hearing the music. And I start imagining things. Imagine things. When I see them here, I feel like belonging to the house. I don't really own the house. The house owns me.
So, Josie is a lovely lady who obviously was a dancer in her young life. And she lets us into her amazing house just on a wing and a prayer. And as a gift that people give you on location, you can never really repay other than to be incredibly respectful about the way you treat them as subjects. But back out in the streets, on the Malecón, I mean, I got lucky with the dreadlocks. What can I say? They just went like that. You know, I looked at the image after, I was like, whoa, got lucky there. You know, a happy accident on location. Sunrise, out in the downtown area of Havana, looking for light. I wanted to have not famous buildings in the background, but just the terrain of Havana laid out before me. And this dancer, of course, is one of the Carlos Acosta dancers. Incredibly powerful, unbelievably mix of ballet and modern dance. Simple portrait, one light portrait on the roof. And then Nikon gave me a gift. And they asked me, they said, we would like you to take a series of lenses that are maybe a little bit off the beaten track, not as widely used as some of the other sort of go-to mainstay lenses. And then we'd like you to use all of them to address the same subject matter. And I was like, okay. So we kind of put our heads together at the studio and thought, okay, what could we do? What kind of subject matter could we tackle? It just so happened that I was teaching a workshop in the south of France right at the time the lavender season was at its peak. And so we made some arrangements and we headed to the lavender fields of the south of France. This is the 19mm PC, and I'm just playing, obviously, with the tilting and the shifting of that lens, trying to play with the depth of field. As opposed to what I showed you earlier. See, this is the thing about versatility. Newspapers, wire services, magazines teach you how to do a pretty fast two-step as a photographer. I showed you a street scene picture earlier where I used 32 speed lights. A lot of the work I showed you here, the big production in the museum, massive amount of light. All of these pictures you're about to see, natural light, not a flash used, okay? So you have to step into all sorts of worlds. And part of what enables you to do that is the technology. Everybody says, or not everybody, but lots of folks will look at you, or maybe look at young photographers and say, man, you should rethink. This is a really hard thing to do. This is difficult. Yeah, that's true. That's true. It's always been difficult, okay? So I happen to think we are living in a golden age of photography because the technology that's being given to us as photographers is enabling us to expand our imagination and sort of level the playing field back against some of the forces pushing against us. We can work quicker, lighter. We can work just as creatively. We can produce sophisticated results, and we can do it without a massive crew. We can do it on our own. Okay, so if you access this kind of technology, this is where things really start to happen in a beautiful, beautiful way. I've never been kind of like in love with cameras, you know, just like they're there, they're a tool. They don't do anything for you until you put your head and your heart into them. But the cameras that are being made now here, that I'm using here, that are on these tables or around you, are special instruments. They really can connect with your head and heart, and that teamwork of the technology and the way you feel is amazing. The results can really be strong. Okay, moving on. That's a 58-1.4, available light against I found an old door, leaned it against the wall. This is the 8-15 zoom fisheye. Am I saying that right? I am saying that right, I think. I'll just move on. But it's this amazing sort of versatile lens that goes from a completely circular fisheye into this sort of bowed and beautiful kind of landscape. This guy's been working lavender his whole life, and he owns all those fields. And you have to notice things as a photographer, because I kind of drilled through this. This is a 20mm lens, right? Very, very kind of environmental. Have to be careful, right? Don't get too awfully close with it, but it really encaptures the world around you. Then switch it up and do a two-step. This is the 300 f4. This tiny telephoto, super light, super, sharp to be sure, but also hand-holdable like you cannot believe. And then it enables you, because it focuses so near. What is that term? Close. That's the word I'm looking for. It focuses really close. So there you go. Those hands have been working a field for this man's entire life. Okay, and you just when you see light like this matching up with a subject such as this gentleman, you just can't let go. So I always think, when I've been in the field for the National Geographic, there's a mantra that goes through my head. And what you just saw was that situation. I think about this: entire to detail, entire to detail, entire to detail. You have to show the whole thing. Then you drill in and get closer. Then you get the personality, then you get the detail. And if you follow that mantra, at the end of a day, you will have a story. Right? National Geographic used to assign me to massive projects. They don't kind of have that scope so much anymore, but thankfully, when I was shooting big jobs for them, there was kind of almost no end to it. They would give you stories that would drive you mad. I got a story once that was called The Universe. It's like, here, Joe, here's 16 weeks, go shoot the universe. If you try to think of the totality of that story, you'll go mad. So when I went out into the field for the Geographic, no matter if I was assigned for 16 weeks, 20 weeks, whatever it was, I have viewed myself as being on assignment for a newspaper every single day. So every single day, I would try to come up with a picture page for tomorrow's newspaper. And that would give some coherence to my efforts. If I could produce a story a day, didn't always succeed, but at the end of pushing like that, you end up with a really coherent and powerful set of pictures that have a linkage. And they're back with the 20 again, and this young lady who was just ridiculously calm in front of the camera. She was 11 or 12 years old, and she just would say, yes, of course, I can step in front of your camera and I will be fine, And then shifting up to the 200 to 500. Okay, this was the first picture we shot of the series. The light presented itself, the lines of the fields presented themselves, and to me, it was a tailor-made situation for a long lens. So I back off. You have to, the changeable lenses on a DSLR or a mirrorless camera become your window, right? That's your portal. And the lens is, don't think of it as a lens, it's an emotional conduit to the scene. How much or how little you put in the scene becomes absolutely crucial to the expression or the reflection of emotions that you're feeling and that you hope to convey. Like, I think the picture is a pretty decent picture and gets across the enormity and the scope and the color and the power of the lavender fields. I'm showing this to a bunch of people who have never been there. That's our job as photographers, is to take this visceral, emotional experience we're having in the field, transfer it through all of this machinery that we have, and then pass it on to someone else and expect them or hope for them to be moved, to think, to feel. And that's a tall order, because face it, we live in a cluttered world visually, right? How many images are around here? I'm surprised you guys are still awake. We're getting battered, senseless, picture after picture after picture. How do you cut through that? You cut through it by using all the tools at your disposal to convey a powerful message, or as powerful a one as you can possibly conceive of. Thank you very much for coming to the Nikon booth today. Calling Dr. Corrado. Anyway, it's been a wonderful PPE. It's been a wonderful booth. My thanks go out to the Nikon folks and to all of you.
Joe, say goodbye to the audience at home, too.
The audience at home, yes, you folks out there in internet land. Stay well.
Joe McNally.